resisted it until my baby was born. My black baby. It wasn't until then that I realized it was silly to be thinking the people who complained about prejudice were just whiners, trying to blame society for whatever problems that they'd managed to create themselves in their own lives, not accepting responsibility. But from the time my son was born, society looked different. And people reacted to me differently than they'd ever reacted before. I remember the first time that I felt prejudice directed at me. It was the first time I took my baby out into public. It wasn't anything anybody said or did. It was more a tangible feeling. Like sometimes when someone would just walk by, it felt as though they had taken this brick of rejection and hurled it at me. But nobody did anything. They didn't so much as change the look on their face. This was altogether new to me. But I have to tell you that since that first time, the same thing happened to me many thousands of times. My son was 4 months old. We were in a store waiting for a friend to get done shopping. I was playing with my baby in the designated children's play area when an older white woman saw us and flew instantly into a rage at me. I listened as this woman ranted on and on until the point when she said, "And a black baby like that too." Why, guys, before I even realized that I was reacting, I found myself shaking her by the collar of her dress, growling in her face, "You take that back." Well, it was right about then my friend showed up. She decided that it was time for us all to be leaving. I learned two things that day. One, unfortunately, prejudice does still exist. And two, that I had perfectly well no idea how to deal with it. None. And it was obvious that if I didn't figure it out real soon, I was going to end up in jail for a really long time. So that day, I resolved that no matter how angry a racial situation might make me, that I would not resort to hitting anyone. That's where my journey began, in learning how to deal with racism. As I raised my son, I was acutely aware of how different his experiences were from those of his white friends. Sometimes the relentless bombardment of prejudice bore down on him so hard that he'd cry himself to sleep at night, begging me to take him to a psychiatrist to figure out why these things kept happening to him. I struggled constantly to try to balance out the effects that society was having on my dark son. I was determined. The prejudice would not pound him into becoming just another angry black man. But accomplishing that took everything I had. You see, my problem was that I was as white as I looked. If you want to see somebody not deal well with prejudice, take a white person. You heard me right. Take a white person who's been enjoying privileged white status all her life, but didn't know it, and make that person suddenly black. What results is shock. Culture shock. That's seeing prejudice actively operating in your own culture and feeling the destructive effects that it has on the human spirit. Yes, now I'm sure that life in the minority lane is distinctly different than white life. What I've learned has troubled me to such an extent that I haven't been able to talk about it until now. So, I want to thank you for listening to my story, mother's story. I invite you to recognize through my experience the prejudice does still exist in our society. I invite you, no, I beg you to accept your personal role in rooting out racism. The words of Dr. King still ring clear. We cannot rest until all people are judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content